Hello, how are you? If you're good, great, I'm happy. If not, I'm glad you're here. So let's see, has anything happened in the last 24 hours? Okay, so let's talk about the Super Bowl halftime shows. I didn't get to watch it last night. Like I said, I was driving home and I didn't make it home in time, and so I didn't get to see either of them. I woke up this morning and I watched both of them, and I have some thoughts. And I thought I would start by saying I do not understand the outrage of everyone saying how horrible the Bad Bunny show was and how offended they were or how disrespectful everything was. You would think that if anybody was not interested in watching it because they knew they were going to hate it, they should have been watching the Turning Point USA alternative. And that means they didn't watch that. They actually did watch the Bad Bunny show. But if they were watching the TPUSA thing like they said they were going to because they thought it was ridiculous to have a Spanish speaking artist, then they wouldn't have seen Bad Bunny to complain about it. I don't understand the problem. But anyway, I have my own thoughts. I'll start with the Turning Point USA show. I thought it was good. I thought that they could have used an extra 2 weeks or so of prep and maybe tightened up the programming a little bit, and probably should have made it about only half the length. I thought it went a little long. The opening national anthem on the guitar sounded great. The first band, and I forget everybody's name, but the first band I thought was really, really powerful. That rock anthem opened the show. It was great. The female singer who took over kind of brought the energy down just a little bit, but I thought she had a wonderful voice. She's very talented. And then I guess the string duet, that was a weird choice. I think made everything a little bit sleepy. I don't know if that was before or after the second guy sang stuff. It all kind of mushed together because, for whatever reason. But when Kid Rock came on and brought the energy back up with Ba with the Ba, it was great. I mean, the audio was an absolute mess, which was surprising because the other acts sounded fantastic. Like the audio engineering was amazing for everything except for Ba with the Ba, and it just sounded like mushy and all like everything was happening all at once. And his sync was definitely off, and that made him look foolish because it looked like he was. I mean, even if he wasn't lip syncing, and I'm pretty sure he was. Even if he wasn't lip syncing, he definitely looked like he was, because the audio sync was so off. And then when he came back on and sang that last song, I thought that was one of the best songs I've ever heard from him. And I've been a fan of his since '99. You know, he was big in my college years. I own a couple of Kid Rock albums. I don't agree with him politically anymore, but that last song he sung, I thought was really, really well done. He's got a great voice still at 55 years old, and he can jump around that stage like I couldn't do it. So it was impressive. I think overall, the show was pretty good. I don't think it was a Super Bowl halftime show, though. I think it was just like a condensed concert show. And that's fine. That's good. The audience, or an audience, wanted an alternative. And I think they delivered exactly what that audience wanted. They like that country music, that salt of the earth, down home, backyard party vibe. And they got exactly that. You know, some of the songs that were sung were real country songs, really just about hard times and working hard and playing hard and all that good stuff. And that's great. I'm glad that an audience that requested something got something that they wanted. So let's now talk about the Bad Bunny show. Blew my face off. Okay, so it's not because of my politics. I don't speak Spanish. I don't know. I can't read Spanish. I didn't know any of what he was singing. Didn't know any of the words. But I didn't have to. And that's the beauty of music. You don't have to hear the words to enjoy the music or the performance. I actually don't really like that reggaeton salsa beat, that dun 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 dun, because for Puerto Rican music, that seems like that's all it is. It's just a dun 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 dun. It's just over and over and over again. To me, that gets boring after a little bit. But to see it being performed and to see everything that was going on, it was absolutely entertaining. That choreography throughout the entire performance was the best I've ever seen in a Super Bowl show. And I've seen, all that Beyonce stuff and when Prince did it, and, Prince obviously being the best Super Bowl halftime show ever. You can't argue that. I mean, I'm sorry, you're just wrong if you think differently. Now, of course, you can think whatever you want, but Prince is the bar. That is the top. You can't get better than that. You can maybe match it, but you can't get better. But I think the Bad Bunny show was extremely well done. Having an actual marriage ceremony in the middle of a 13-minute musical set was incredible. I mean, maybe I'm a little weak because I'm still trying to get through this cold, so I'm maybe emotionally kind of weak. But when I was watching it, having known that this was an actual wedding that was taking place on stage, I got teary-eyed. I mean, I tears fell out of my face. So it was beautiful. And I've been to Puerto Rico a bunch of times, and that gives me some perspective on what I was seeing. When it opened up, it was showing you what Puerto Rican culture is like. They have food stands and drink stands just on the street, selling their stuff, and people are just joyous and partying, and there's music everywhere, and the island is a fantastic, beautiful place, and I encourage every single person to visit there. It's an American place. You don't even need a passport to go there. It is part of America, no matter what people want to pretend. Puerto Ricans are Americans. And part of what I think that show was trying to show was that Puerto Ricans are proud people. And they are Americans. They know they are, but they're Puerto Ricans first. And yes, so many have come to this mainland because the opportunities that once were in Puerto Rico are not necessarily there so much anymore. They used to have a huge pharmaceutical industry there that mainland companies set up, and that's all now been taken away. They also have major power infrastructure problems. Anytime a hurricane even gets close to them, half or even the entire island goes dark. And that's the reason why part of that show, they had line workers up on the power poles. That was to represent the ongoing struggle for Puerto Rico just to have basic power the whole year, because they don't. If you don't know anything about Puerto Rico or Puerto Ricans, I can see why you might have rejected some of that. I mean, most of it was in Spanish, except for the Lady Gaga part, which was pretty great too. I'm not a fan of Lady Gaga, but I appreciate her music. I think she sings beautifully. Yeah, Ricky Martin was in there. I'm giving that a very high mark. I thought it was excellently done. The choreography and the camera choreography was among the best I've ever seen in any live performance ever. And to pull something like that off in a 13-minute show that is smack dab in the middle of a Super Bowl, that is a technical feat that I really, really appreciate. So I'm putting it just under what the Prince halftime show was. Obviously halftime shows have changed over the last couple of decades. They're no longer mini concerts anymore. They are definite productions that are meant to be viewed through a television screen, rather than if you're like at the game watching it, from the stands. They're catering to their 150 million viewers and maybe even 300 million worldwide who watch this on a screen. I'm not a fan of Bad Bunny. I'm not really familiar with any of his music, but I don't think you had to be to really enjoy this production. It was fantastic. So while the TPUSA show was perfectly great, I mean, I was entertained through a lot of it. I thought it was a little long, and I thought that the tone of it was weird. It started out really rock heavy and then sort of mellowed out into more almost ballad stuff. And then it had the string quartet or the string duet thing that was really weird. And then the super jump up to the hard rock of Kid Rock, and then sort of mellowed out at the end, which was nice. I liked that. And I even liked the last little bit with Charlie Kirk's message. While I've never really agreed with Charlie Kirk's politics and the methodology that he used to try and spread those words, I absolutely respect those words that he said at the end of this production. I thought it was nice. It was a very nice thing to hear and positive and uplifting. I really think the difference between the two shows is that the Turning Point USA show was catering to an audience that rejects change and only wants what they know. They just want a great show from great artists that they already listen to every single day and who live the same life that they do. And that's fine. That's great. If that's what you want, I'm glad that Turning Point was able to deliver that to that audience. But what I think the Super Bowl has been trying to do over the last 15 years, maybe even more than that, but I think what they're trying to do is be more inclusive to a broader audience. The Super Bowl isn't just for Middle America anymore. The Super Bowl and the NFL in general are trying to spread out across the globe. And why wouldn't they? I mean, yes, football is an American thing, but we've been playing games in Europe and in other countries for more than a decade now. And last I heard, we're going to be playing something like 17 games. No, like something like 11 or 12, 13. I don't know. Somewhere in the teens, number of games outside of the United States next year. And I believe their long-term goals is to have franchises or have teams that are outside of the United States. That makes sense. Football isn't just for America. Football is for the entire world. And we should encourage and embrace any efforts to bring in a broader audience from other countries. If you are against that, think about what you're against. You are against sharing something so awesome, something you love as much as football, with people who are not from the country you live in. What is that? Who does that? If you can't tolerate a culture that is different than yours, I'm sorry, brother, but that says way more about you than it does about the organization trying to expose their audience to a broader culture. I feel like that makes you maybe a more simple person. If you can't experience other cultures and you can't find positives in other cultures and other peoples, you're getting close to walking that line of racism, because now all of a sudden you're shutting out anyone who's different than you. You are judging them differently than people who look like you and think like you. And it's really somewhat of a disappointment that this was such a big deal, that the threat of a halftime show for the biggest football game of the year being in a language that you don't understand, flying a flag that you don't believe is American, and acting differently than you do. I'm sorry, but if you're gonna take that super seriously and be angry about it, you kind of have to consider you might be racist. And if you are, admit it, embrace it. If you are racist, if you don't like Bad Bunny because he speaks Spanish or because he lives in Puerto Rico, think about that. Who are you? If you don't agree with his politics, he doesn't really have politics. He's spoken out against ICE because he doesn't really agree with what ICE is doing and how they're doing it. Just like tens of millions of Americans don't like it. But because he's from Puerto Rico and sings in Spanish, You took a stand and said, I'm not going to watch that. I demand something else. I signed the petition to get Hank Williams Jr. the third or whoever it is to play at the Super Bowl rather than him. Well, unfortunately, Bad Bunny has like 100 million followers. How many does your guy have? I don't know. So the NFL makes decisions based on their future business, and who they choose to play at their game is up to them. You might think ultimately it's up to you, the audience, and I guess it is. But there's going to come a day where you're going to realize that you, the audience that you think you are, is so much smaller than the actual audience. Because that audience for the NFL and for football and for just in general is getting bigger and bigger every day. The world is getting smaller and smaller. You can hide and you can be in your small town, drinking your beer and listening to your country music, working on your truck. And if that's all you want out of life, awesome. Be that, do that, raise your family the best you can, love as much as you want. But please don't talk poorly of people who want a little more, love a little more broadly, and accept a little bit more. Because we're not bad people. We're just opening our eyes a little wider, opening our arms a little wider, and opening our hearts a little wider. You took a stand, and just because he's brown, just because he's from a place that maybe you don't think is part of America, maybe because he wore a dress once, you just can't see past that. And that's a shame, because Puerto Rico is a really cool place. Puerto Rican food is really good. Plantains, oh my God. You should give it a try sometime. Close your eyes to who the person is and just feel it. You might be surprised. You might like it. And maybe that scares you, but maybe being scared is important. Maybe you can learn something. Maybe you can grow. Maybe you can be just a little bit better. Or not. I'll see you tomorrow.